BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNid88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And welcome to BBOR, the home of true crime talk radio and your premier destination for unsolved mysteries, criminal psychology, and exploring the dark side of cyberspace. My name is Ned DeHaan, and I am your host, as well as the creator of AstroPsych 400 here on YouTube, and regular contributor to the Zodiac Killer channel. And a great way to support these shows is just by listening to some more content. But you can also go over to Amazon.com and have a look at the book Killer on a White Horse, written by me, Ned DeHaan. It is a novel, murder mystery, inspired by the Zodiac Manson connection, but it is indeed fictional. However, who doesn't love a good mystery? And there is always the TeeSpring page. Feel free to check out some of the merchandise. And remember, being weird is not a crime. Let the show begin. This episode of Black Box Online Radio is brought to you by Rep Sports and Raze Energy. Are you a fan of energy drinks, protein shakes, and health foods? Well, I sure am. I use the stuff almost every single day. They sell Raze Energy products at my local gym, but you can have them shipped to your home. Use the coupon code NED075, that's NED075, for discounts applied at the checkout. The link is in the description box.
Okay, hello everybody. Today is Monday, another Zodiac Monday. Welcome to the show. First, I would like to give a big thank you to everyone who listened to the recent episode on the Z32 cipher that came out over the weekend, and I'll be responding to a lot of your comments on that one, as well as just comments on all of the Zodiac episodes here on this channel. And first, I would like to begin with a challenge question, as I did last week. You guys know that I'm a fan of the channel Oak Leaves and Onions here on YouTube, and one time I responded to one of the hosts' challenge questions here on Zodiac Monday, but recently somebody responded to that episode just in the comments section on her channel, the woman who hosts Oak Leaves and Onions, that is, and this guy wrote out this: I am a 22-year-old male who is getting nowhere with the ladies. Every time I try to start something, I always end up stuck in the friend zone and being a shoulder to cry on. And my challenge question is something that I would like to ask you guys. What is your response to him? Because I think that it's very telling, and I've definitely been there about 10, 15 years ago. I know what he's thinking and what he's feeling, and looking back on life, it seems so obvious. I mean, think about what this guy just said. He said that he knows exactly what he wants, a quality relationship from an intimate partner, right? But what is he doing? He is entering into friendships that are making him feel bad. So he knows that they're going to make him feel bad, and he is willingly entering into them and staying in them and acting as this shoulder to cry on or the stuck in the friend zone guy. Well, what on earth is he doing? Why doesn't he just get up, walk away, and use his energy to go out and actually find a girlfriend, even if you have to talk to 30 people or 50 people or 100 people, as opposed to spending time only with this small amount of individuals who are not responding in a way that is appreciative of him, nor that he appreciates of them. And I know exactly what the response would be. Oh yeah, well, there are a lot of benefits to being friends with this person. It's just this one behavior from them that I don't like. I just don't like being the shoulder to cry on. Oh yeah, we're great friends. We talk about a lot of things and we have a good time together. It's just this thing I don't like. No, If he's responding that way, saying he's stuck in the friend zone and doesn't like being a shoulder to cry on, I think he's playing the long game. He is just expecting that one day this woman or group of women that she is just gonna wake up and smell the coffee and think, you know what? I need to be in a relationship with him. That's what he's waiting for. He's acting as the shoulder to cry on because he has this expectation that one day, someday, somehow, she's just gonna throw herself at him, and he's just tolerating the misery for the present. But you guys know I'm also a fan of the channel Barehanded Enterprises, and the host of that one, Bulent Gherkin, appeared on another podcast, the Quit Bitching podcast, nonetheless, and he said something very inspirational, if you will. He said, "The past is gone. Tomorrow never comes. All we have is the present. All we have is today. So get up, work hard, and get yourself a wonderful life." And I was like, all right, sounds like some good stuff. I wish I could just take that little soundbite out of that podcast and send it on to that guy who left the comment. And yes, that's from someone else's channel. I doubt the real person who wrote that out is actually going to listen to this episode here. So be as brutally honest as you want in the comment section and respond to that challenge question. Now I would like to go to some of the Zodiac material. Oh, but before I forget, at the end of the episode, I'll just stick around and chat with you guys for a bit, and you can see the timestamp, follow along with some of the other subjects, and there are a lot of true crime developments, and some of them even have some Zodiac connections. But as in terms of Zodiac killer news, a new sample of Zodiac suspect McDuff's handwriting was aired on the Zodiac Killer official channel, which is run by Tom Voigt. And we also had a comment about McDuff from ADC, who says, "Ned, a lot seems to be happening over on Tappa Talk about William Andrew. His wife seems to be answering questions, albeit through an intermediary. Maybe you could clue in some of us lazy folk sometime." And big thank you to ADC for the comment. William Andrew is the full name of McDuff, or perhaps the best way to put it is his full name is William McDuff Andrew. He is a suspect that was brought forward by Michael Morford of ZodiacKiller.net, formerly known as ZodiacKillersite.com. And yes, his widow, meaning McDuff's widow, Kim, was responding to questions about McDuff being the Zodiac Killer, and I got over on Tappa Talk after I read ADC's comment, and it was very disorganized, and not only is somebody acting as the intermediary for Kim Andrew, but there are people responding and asking questions. Very, very messy when you actually wanted to get to the meat and potatoes of the issues. So giving a shout out to Tejas Rob, who wrote out a list of the points that McDuff's widow, Kim Andrew, shared in that discussion. One point is that he says McDuff wore a size 8 shoe. He did not live in San Francisco, right around the corner where Redditich was killed, as was claimed. That is referring to the 1970 murder of Richard Redditich. I always mess this up. What was it? June 19th, 1970? A possible Zodiac crime. He did not know the Taggarts in Vacaville, was not in Eureka in 1990, did not know Chester Klingle. He did not own a Codebreaker book until years later in the 2000s. Law enforcement did not contact Mrs. Mack, I guess that's referring to Mrs. Andrew. He did not match the description and was not close to a relative in Montana. Let's go through some of these points one by one. The first is that the footprints that were taken from Lake Berryessa, the Zodiac crime that occurred on September 27th of 1969, were from a shoe size that was 10 and a half. And if McDuff was wearing a size 8 shoe, does that eliminate him immediately? No, I don't think that is sufficient to eliminate someone, because Morph even responded in the comments section, Mike Morford that is, about how he wears a bigger size boot than he does for a shoe. Lots of things can change, and I had a pair of sandals once that was a size 8 that fit like a glove. I shouldn't say that because they're sandals and they're open-toed, right? But no, they were size 8, but they fit perfectly. My shoe size is 10 and a half, and so I can definitely relate to how some times you could wear an 8 or a 10.5. Those things are definitely malleable, even though I'm using that word figuratively. But no, I mean, that shouldn't eliminate McDuff immediately, but that does give you some room for doubt. Okay, so he did not live in certain places that have connections to the Zodiac Killer activity. But there's another one that is right at the bottom of Tejas Rob's list, and that is that McDuff did not see The Exorcist until years after 1974, and I did read that entire comment that Kim Andrew had written out, and that is that the Exorcist letter came out in 1974 by the Zodiac, but what she said was she was with McDuff, William McDuff Andrew, and they were out one day in Sacramento, and it was just a really hot day, and there was a showing of The Exorcist, and they only went into the movie theater because it was air conditioned and they wanted to escape the heat and they thought the movie was terrible and they walked out of it. And she said that was the first time that McDuff had seen The Exorcist. So that is something. If that is indeed true, I mean, like, it's not exactly like we can read anybody's mind or be a medium beyond the grave. Now, this thing here, he did not own a code book until years later in the 2000s. I think that is definitely some room for doubt as well, because, as I understand, that's been a big part of this theory involving Zodiac suspect McDuff. The Zodiac Killer famously wrote ciphers such as the Z408, the Z340, the Z13, and the Z32. They all have these names because of the numbers of symbols in them. But the theory is that McDuff would have owned that code book before he became the Zodiac Killer and before the composition of the ciphers. Law enforcement has not contacted Mrs. Mack or Mrs. Andrew. That relates to something that I think I discussed with Morph on the Zodiac Killer channel's Interview with the Experts series, which I'm also the host of, and Morph said that he posted info about finding McDuff as a suspect, and very early on, law enforcement asked him to take down material off his website because I guess they were looking into it, but they did not contact Kim Andrew to follow up on that, so maybe there's some less room for speculation there. And somebody wrote this out on the Zodiac Killer official YouTube channel, not on this forum, but on YouTube, saying Morph did something very intriguing by trying to identify Zodiac suspect McDuff. He located the payphone that was used after the Zodiac Killer's crime on July 4th of 1969, and the first Zodiac Killer phone call, which came at 12:40 a.m. on July 5th of 1969. This is after the Blue Rock Springs shooting. And he looked at the houses in the area for someone that would have matched the witness descriptions. And he found McDuff with the glasses, and he was 5 feet 8 inches tall, he was 200 pounds, and that does match up with some things. Mike Michaud described the shooter at the Blue Rock Springs incident, that's the surviving victim. He described the shooter as a 5'8" individual, beefier, on the heavier side, and I was just looking at one of the descriptions in the police report, and it said on the shorter side as well, so there are a lot of inconsistencies in witness descriptions. Bear in mind that Mike Michaud had a flashlight in his face, and he was being shot at, and the bullets are going into him. It sounds horribly painful, but he did say 5'8" and a beefy built guy, not overly fat, but just a bigger guy, and McDuff was 5'8", 200 pounds, and the footprints that were taken from Lake Berryessa, albeit from a 10.5 size shoe, are from someone who was estimated to have been 200 to 220 pounds, as per the casts that were made by Harold K. Snook. So I could see how all of that just came together and lined up, and all of these things, plus finding the code book, and it made sense, right? Well, Kim Andrew has definitely wanted to challenge that, and some people on this forum here on Tappa Talk were saying that Mike Morford did something very bad by contacting or McDuff's widow, or just sharing all of this info, because you're vilifying someone who was never charged with any of these crimes. And I absolutely disagree with that. to be honest with you, I don't think that Morph did anything wrong by proposing McDuff as a suspect. And Kim Andrew even said that it is painful to hear about all these accusations. But what if he found the guy? What if Morph's theory turned out to be true? I definitely think that the true crime world requires a no stone unturned approach, and I think that sometimes people are going to have to face the reality that one of their relatives was a serial killer in secret. But it doesn't mean that McDuff is. I'm not saying that he was. But I mean, that simple statement that it is inappropriate to accuse someone of being the Zodiac killer, especially someone who has already passed away, and you can't libel a dead man. And Morph has never accused McDuff's widow of any wrongdoing or anything. As far as I know, according to the timeline that was put forward, he shouldn't have been romantically involved with her at all in 1969. I mean, and I'm always open to correction, but I don't even know if they knew each other at that point. However, this does raise some doubts about what could have happened with McDuff. I mean, before 2021, I had never heard of this guy, William Andrew, and he perhaps was just somebody who went to Chico State, got a degree in sociology, and he worked for the state of California, the Department of Corrections, and he saw The Exorcist one day, apparently didn't like it very much, and walked out with his wife in Sacramento, nonetheless. But what do you guys think about McDuff as a Zodiac killer suspect? And you could weigh in the comments section down below. And do you have any doubts about him having a size 8 shoe and not having connection to some places where the victims may have lived? What do you think about any of that info? Please weigh in the comments section. And another piece of Zodiac news is that on this channel, I have recently completed the Linkletter connection, the Zodiac Killer Linkletter connection, a 3-part series, when I was talking about 2 big questions. The first is, was Robert Linkletter the Zodiac Killer? And the second was, what happened to his sister Diane Linkletter, who passed away on October 4th of 1969? And I think that there's a lot of misinformation surrounding there. I said there was one final point that I would bring up on Zodiac Mondays, and that is that I believe a lot of info has been shared on the internet, and the Linkletter connection goes well back into the 1970s. According to Mae Brussel, when she was doing her radio show in 1978, that Robert Linkletter was a Zodiac killer suspect, and they were already thinking that the suicide of Diane Linkletter could have been Zodiac related or connected to her brother in some way. She passed away on October 4th of 1969 after falling from a 6th floor window. And what exactly happened to her? Well, it has been ruled a suicide. Rest in peace to Diane. But also, I'm going to say something that is a little bit theoretical. It might even be an assumption, but after reading Tom Bleeker's book, Diane Linkletter, A Princess Wrongly Accused, which I discussed in that series, I think that people are under the impression that Diane Linkletter was alone at the time of her suicide and there were no witnesses. But she was not. There's another individual in the apartment with her on the 6th floor named Ed Durston. He is in the room with her, and he had 2 different stories about what happened. One was that he saw her jump out the window and he tried to grab her and he could only grab the drapes and he just had a handful of drapes instead and she fell. And another one was that he was actually able to grab her by the ankle. I don't believe the second one. I think it's the first, if that did indeed happen, and that she fell to her death. Now, Tom Bleeker had his alternative theory that it wasn't a suicide, it was that Diane Linkletter was with Ed Durston after a party that had occurred on October 3rd of 1969 that carried on over into the early AM hours of October 4th, and that she's with Ed Durston in the apartment. He was possibly an unexpected house guest, maybe an expected one, but she even bakes cookies at 3 o'clock in the morning because she has a house guest, and by 9 a.m., Ed Durston made a sexual advance on Diane Linkletter, and she refused him. She even calls her brother Robert Linkletter nonetheless, and not only is that a theory, the switchboard in the apartment building recorded the call, so Robert Linkletter is simply not present in the hours, minutes, in the hour before her death. He is en route to the apartment building, so she calls him, and Ed Durston is panicking because he knows that her brother is coming. He doesn't want to get charged for a serious crime, so some altercation takes place, and either Ed Durston's chasing after Diane and she goes out the window, or possibly he pushed her in some way, if I've understood Tom Bleeker's analysis of that. But if Robert Linkletter had murdered his sister because she figured out that he was the Zodiac killer, why isn't he mentioned in any of the police reports? Why isn't Ed Durston saying, no, I didn't murder Diane Linkletter? I mean, her brother was there. He can tell you. I mean, he's not mentioned there. So I believe that the internet is under the impression that it was just Robert and Diane in the apartment, but that's not true. And I also think that they are heavily relying on assumptions about this Zodiac Linkletter connection. Robert Linkletter is a Zodiac killer suspect, and yes, he is the son of Art Linkletter, passed away in 1980 in a car accident. I think that it's just all assumptions, and he has absolutely gone down in my book in terms of being a Zodiac killer suspect after looking into that and doing the 3-part series. I don't know why I said 6, the 3-part series on the Linkletter connection, and he's definitely near the bottom. But I would also like to point out that one objective of that series was to find out whether or not Diane Linkletter was a Zodiac killer victim, and I want to just close the case on that and say almost certainly not. And was her brother the Zodiac killer? Highly, highly unlikely. I think that it all just doesn't match up, and it's based on a single letter that someone wrote saying that they have this idea about who the Zodiac killer could be, and he was a real person of interest, but not an ounce of hard evidence. I mean, where are the things like fingerprints or something like that? Where are the definitive ways to place him near by the crime scenes? And I just don't think that the hard evidence is there. And Aaron Aragon has one comment about the Linkletter connection saying, after 50 years of Zodiac media inquiry and compound interest, I ain't buying this theory. We all want a resolution to the mystery, but this is really reaching laughable. And right, I think that the people who are putting the Linkletter connection forward are under a few misapprehensions about how Diane would have passed away, because the whole theory is that she either committed suicide because she knew her brother was the Zodiac killer, and also in Mae Brussels' report from 1978 that Diane Linkletter was present at the Cielo Drive house during the Sharon Tate murders. And I mean, that's another point, though, that I didn't really buy, because Robert Linkletter is allegedly also there, and he left his glasses behind, and then he murdered Dr. Victor Oda in 1970 because the eye doctor could have traced the glasses back to him. Misapprehension number 2. Victor Oda is frequently described as an eye surgeon, and an ophthalmologist, or an eye surgeon, I mean, those types of medical doctors are very different than an optometrist. I mean, one is a medical doctor, MD, the other is an OD. And I think that, again, they're under the misapprehension that Dr. Victor Oda would have been Robert Linkletter's optometrist. I mean, I'm just heavily against that type of theory. But I think that this is a good opportunity to talk about the Oda family murders and how they're could or could not be any type of Zodiac killer connection, and I would like to go to an article from sfweekly.com to help us out that says sheriff's deputies were the first to arrive on Monday, October 20th, 1970, at the scene of the fire at 999 Rodeo Gulch Road, a $300,000 flagstone now worth over $2 million in the Soquel Hills, overlooking Santa Cruz and the ocean. Things were odd about this fire from the beginning. Deputies had to push away a red Rolls-Royce and a black Lincoln to get through the driveway. And then they found the body of Dorothy Cadwallader, a 38-year-old medical secretary, was floating at the top of the pool. Beneath her were the bodies of homeowners Victor and Virginia Oda and their two sons, Taggart and Derek, ages 11 and 12 respectively. It was a massacre. All 5 victims had been shot in the back of the head, and their hands were bound with what were described as colorful scarves. 3 of the victims' faces were also covered by the scarves. And these scarves all belonged to Dr. Victor Oda. It was reported in the article that I read off during the Linkletter connection that there were things that he wore to be fashionable. It was pretty awful, Santa Cruz County District Attorney Peter Chong said, recalling that the sight of young Derek Oda being pulled from the pool. He looked exactly like my son, said Chong. Dr. Victor Masahi Oda was a prominent eye surgeon, eye surgeon, not optometrist, who had moved to Santa Cruz after being discharged from the Air Force in 1960. Virginia Oda sang in a local chorus and modeled gowns for a Santa Cruz women's club. The 2 daughters, Tara and Lark, were fortunately both away at school while their family was slaughtered. Making a case even stranger, a bizarre typewritten note was found on the window of the Rolls-Royce. Today, World War III will begin, as brought to you by the people of the free universe. The missive began, all in lowercase. The writer of the note promised the penalty of death. Penalty was spelled Penelty, the penalty of death to anything or anyone who does not support natural life on this planet. The note closed with a listing of tarot cards in bold print. Knight of Wands, Knight of Cups, Knight of Pentacles, Knight of Swords. And one of the words knight was misspelled N-I-G-H-T like the night sky. So, point number 1. Other than the misspellings, there really is no Zodiac connection into this. And this is why I wanted to talk about the Oda murder on this Zodiac Killer News Report, because these people are very clearly eco-terrorists. The Zodiac Killer was an ego-terrorist. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but it is absolutely true. Let's read this one again. The penalty of death to anyone or anything who does not support natural life on this planet. These people are clearly laying out the motive that they committed a crime because they felt that people were not respecting natural living ways on the earth. Eco-terrorism. The Zodiac is an ego-terrorist. All the Zodiac Killer is doing is saying that he is obsessed with himself. He wants to die and be reborn in paradise, and those who he has killed will become his slaves. The Zodiac is just doing things to fuel his own ego. I like killing people because it is so much fun. It's even more fun than hunting wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all. I want people to wear Zodiac Killer buttons, wear some nice Zodiac Killer buttons, or even some not so nice Zodiac Killer buttons. Oh, heck with it, just wear any Zodiac Killer buttons. It's all about himself, and absolutely I don't think that there is any direct connection to tarot cards or something like that. Now, it is possible that some of the symbols in the Zodiac Killer's world could have come from witchcraft, most notably the Zodiac Killer symbol itself. Geraldo Rivera did the TV show in the 1990s that heavily tried to promote the suggestion that the Zodiac Killer was using the symbol of Aleister Crowley's satanic message, so to speak, and saying that that's a satanic cross. I don't believe that for a second, to be honest, but Witchcraft enters into the story for a couple reasons, most notably because the Zodiac killer victim Darlene Ferrin, who was murdered on July 4th of 1969 by the Zodiac, was rumored to have dabbled in witchcraft a little bit. I haven't really heard anything about Betty Lou Jensen or Cecilia Shepard, the other female victims from the Zodiac crimes, from Lake Herman Road and Lake Berryessa, respectively. I haven't heard anything about them entering into any type of witchcraft circles, but if you guys know anything, you can put your responses in the comments section down below. But if anything, it seems like the Oda family murders resemble more like the activities of the Manson family, especially tying things around the neck, like the way the cords were tied around victims at Cielo Drive. And the Manson family definitely talked about the environment. They were very hypocritical about it, but they definitely talked about the environment. And for a while, there's this movement in the early 60s, 70s. I don't even know when it began exactly, but it's called ATWA, Air, Trees, Water, Animals, which I guess could just as easily be animals, trees, water, air. But they're saying that that's just the religion, that like you worship those things. But I really don't know if there's any actual Manson family connection to this. Instead, I'd this could just as easily be a different group of eco-terrorists, and I think this eco-terrorism stuff is absolutely ridiculous in the most painful sense of the word. The whole reason why they're trying to protect the environment or protect the animals and the trees and the water and the air and anyone who is living a natural way, the reason why they're trying to protect those things is because they want what? A more peaceful world, right? But the solution to getting a more peaceful world is to slaughter innocent people, to commit murder, or even the eco-terrorists who burn down housing complexes or animal testing facilities. The absolutely destructive. It's like, oh, well, I think the world should be peaceful, so I'm going to run around and set things on fire. Yeah, I'm all for civil disobedience, but I'm not for civil ridiculousness. I mean, shame on them, really, and absolutely sickening what happened to the Oda family. That is so much more than just um, burning down an unoccupied housing complex, like stopping a new construction. Real people murdered and just left in the pool like that just to send a message. Horrible, horrible, sickening behavior. But one final point is that there was a conviction in the Oda family murders, and it was a guy named John Linley Frazier, who was 24 years old at the time. He was born in Ohio, and the New York Daily News has a little bio on him. Frazier had a history of petty crimes as a youngster, but had calmed down after he dropped out of high school, married, and found steady work as an auto mechanic. Then 6 months before the killing, he flipped out, no doubt a reaction to LSD and mescaline he was taking, a neighbor told United Press International. Ah, well, that's just the anti-drug campaign starting up again, but I digress. Frazier left his wife and let his hair and beard grow out long and became an eco-freak. Frazier declared that he had stopped driving, for example, on orders from the Almighty. Frazier was arrested, and he pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity and appeared to be barely in touch with reality during his not one, not two, but three different trials, one to establish guilt, a second to determine sanity, and a third to determine the sentence. Although he never offered a confession, he gave the police details of the killings to a psychiatrist named David Marlowe. Frazier said he broke into Oda's house when no one was home, spotted what looked like an animal skin bedspread, and went berserk. It blew my mind, the defendant recalled. He never noticed that it was fake. Oda's wife, Virginia, was the first to arrive. The intruder tied her up and berated her for destroying the planet. Next to arrive was Dorothy Cadwallader. She had offered a lift to one of the Oda boys after school. She and the boys were tied up, and Oda and his son, who arrived a few minutes later, were also tied up. Frazier said he had asked Oda to burn his house to the ground. Instead, Oda offered him whatever he wanted. That set Frazier into a rage, and he started shooting. So, yes, Frazier was convicted of this, and from the previous articles that I've read, he ended up committing suicide in his jail cell in 2009. So, just a tragic story all around, but very different crimes than that of the Zodiac Killer. And now I would like to move on to the next segment and talk about some comments that you guys left on my recent video about the Zodiac Killer's Z32 cipher. And I did propose an original solution to that. And the Zodiac mailed 4 ciphers that have been confirmed: the Z408, the Z340, the Z13, and the Z32. The Z408 has mostly been completely decoded except for the final line, which some people say is its own cipher. They call it the Z18. And then the Z340 has been more or less completely decoded by David Warnchak, Carl Van Eyck, and Sam Blake. And then there's the Z13 and the Z32. Now, with the Z32, I looked at the first 2 lines and I deciphered that as California North. The second line was by D of vehicles, which could mean either department or division. I think division is actually a better word, but department makes more sense in the English language. Petaluma West Division. So the full cipher would be California North by Division of Vehicles, Petaluma West Division. And the location of the bomb that I was predicting was to go westward from the Department of Vehicles to a school that was due west, more or less, and that was Wilson Elementary School, which is just north of Petaluma West Division, and that's also ties into the whole California North angle. Now, was my solution correct? I am not selling anything like that person on Amazon that was charging $30 to read their solution to the Z18 cipher. No. I'd say less than 50% chance, maybe like 40%, I think that my solution was correct. And the reason why is because I frequently quote the playwright David Albarn, but one quotation from him that I haven't used yet on BBOR is, "It's lumpy. I can see the places where it's stitched together. Some people's work is more elegant." Absolutely, absolutely. But one point, though, that I think 99% chance is correct is the first 2 words in the Z32 are California North. There could be some type of additional meaning. There could be some type of hidden meaning. Maybe there's a whole solution to the cipher that hasn't been found yet, but they heavily resemble California and North. The second word is Omega, O-R-T, and G. It's only off by 2 letters, and the letter G is a misspelling, but that's 1 letter away from H. I absolutely believe that those words were intentionally designed that way to resemble California and North. And there was one part of the cipher that I even recorded it and was going to put it in my video, but I decided not to put it in because I think it's a little bit too weird. And you see 3 shapes that are mostly filled in. 2 are completely filled in on the top line, a square and a triangle. The triangle could be a delta, but they've been blacked out and they've been wholly filled with ink. And I'd almost thought that the zodiac symbol that has almost completely filled in on the second line might have been a boundary. Like if you were to just take the words that are outside of those 3 symbols, those need to be reversed, and it could be North California, Division West Petaluma, by the Division of Vehicles. But even I think that's pushing it a little bit too much. But I said, though, if you go from the Department of Vehicles to the westward direction, you encounter a school very easily. It's 5 miles away. And then we had a comment from Pommy, who wrote in saying, "Welp, I did check the established date of the school, and it states that it was built in 1863, so definitely around the time of the letter." It would have been around at the time of the letter. That's the meaning of that. Your decipher may well be correct. It certainly would fit with the Zodiac's attempt to frighten people about bombs and school children. It's also in a location in Sonoma County the Zodiac would have been familiar with, about 50 miles from San Francisco. And that's what I just thought all of it was lining up. Like, I had never heard of Petaluma West Division before. I put it into Google and it just came right to the search of the like the top of the search results, and if this were a novel or a fictitious story, oh yeah, that'd be the perfect solution, because it's a novel. It's, like you had something and it checks out and it matches up with places. The Zodiac operated in Vallejo. The Zodiac operated in Napa County with Lake Berryessa and Presidio Heights. The Zodiac is all about changing the locations. The Zodiac also threatened school children. The Zodiac also talked about planting the bomb. So an elementary school and as we said here in Sonoma County, about 50 miles from San Francisco, go to a different place altogether, and something that's challenging but solvable. If only, though. Like I said, though, my the reason why I think that my solution might get like a 45% is the full thing is California North by D of vehicles. Petaluma West Division, D of vehicles. Something about that bothers me, and if I were to be reviewing someone else's solution to the Z32, I would say the same thing. Like, it's possible, but not quite. And if anything, I think division of vehicles was the better way to view it. But I mean, I don't really know if that's correct or not, and I would just like to turn it over to you guys. You can weigh in the comments section down below. Big thank you to everyone who listened to that episode, though, on the Z32 cipher. Irish Brummy01 says, you may or may not be right, but definitely interesting. Good work. CD says, it's possible that .38 and 12 are part of the 4, 6, or 8-digit grid coordinates. Oh, and the Zodiac says that he shot a person with a 38, and then on the Z32 cipher it says -12. Yeah, I mean, why not? Anything's possible at this point. And moving on to our next segment here, I wanted to respond to some more of your questions and comments, and we have one from Toxcoy that says, Ned, thank you for answering my question about the Zodiac Killer New Orleans Axeman connection, but I heard you say some very critical things of the Ripper hoax theory in that episode. I thought you supported the idea that Jack the Ripper was a hoax. And I believe he's referring to about 2 weeks ago when I responded to a guy named Dave who wrote out a big piece on the Zodiac hoax theory and the Ripper hoax theory. Now, with the Ripper hoax theory, I have said frequently on the channel, I think it's a clearer narrative. I think it's perhaps even more plausible than the Zodiac hoax theory, but I am not even saying that it's wrong. Do I support it? I don't know. It's an unsolved case, absolutely. There has not been an official determination. I simply thought that the guy that was endorsing it was jumping to conclusions. And there are lots of reasons why you shouldn't do that, and I went into that in that episode. But we had several more comments come in about the Zodiac hoax theory, and two of these are from somebody named My Response Notifications Are Off. That's the name of the YouTube handle, and it is true. This person does not respond, he or she, whoever they are. And the first one was, if you want to get a Zodiac case enthusiast defensive, tell him there was no Zodiac killer. I don't know about other people, but me? No, I would never be defensive about that. I have always said I'll accept the result if it turns out that it is a suspect that I've said some very critical things of, and there's a single killer, and it's somebody like Ross Sullivan or Lawrence Kane, someone whom I've mostly dismissed. I'll say, okay, I was wrong, it's them. Or if it turns out that it is a hoax, like this person here just said, I would also accept that. It's not really a competition, and I'm also not someone who thinks that the authorities are constantly lying to me. If the FBI signs off on a solution, I'm definitely more in line to think that uh, that is there's a little bit of truth into it. Maybe it could even be completely true. But the next comment from the same person, my response notifications are off, is in the genre of unsolved true crime, putting out quote unquote concepts that are not necessarily proven and possibilities of what may have happened or what people want to hear. It's what drives their own interest. It's what detectives do to solve the cases. It's what you do to make podcasts. And to be totally honest, the only nitpicking I hear is from you about the theories of others. And about this comment, though, I criticize a lot of other people here on Black Box Online Radio. I mean, I'm the first to admit this is a commentary channel, and I also think that you're supposed to do that. If someone has written a book, especially a non-fiction book, you are supposed to challenge them. Perhaps that ties into the first comment. Why are you being critical of the Ripper hoax theory in that episode when you've said some praiseworthy things for it in the past? Well, because there are reasons for side A and reasons for side B, and we don't necessarily know the truth yet, so we're examining it from different points of view. But to only say that all I do is nitpick at other people's theories, with the Zodiac Killer mystery, I've proposed several original possibilities. Last weekend I revealed my solution to the Zodiac's Z32 cipher, and I said that it was California North by Department of Vehicles, Petaluma West Division. In that area, by the Petaluma West Division in the Department of Vehicles in quote-unquote North California is what? An elementary school. And to be fair, the solution is D of vehicles, so it could be division of vehicles, and I think that's actually a more plausible way of looking at it. But in what I came up with, that was my answer. And another attempted solution that I put out to the Z340 cipher is in a full episode here on this channel, which has simply been mostly eradicated, because after I tried to solve the Z340 myself, 3 weeks later, I kid thee not, David Oranchak and his partners solved the Z340 for real. And what I had proposed was that the Z340 was not a real cipher. It was just a hieroglyphic story. It was a set of symbols that had personal meaning to the person who wrote it, like the plus signs represented trauma in a person's life, and the dashes represented the change from childhood into adolescence. And I have a whole episode still about it here on this channel, but that was an attempt for me not to nitpick at someone else's theory, but to propose my own. I've also given my own solution to the artwork on the Halloween card about a hidden meaning in that, as well as one that I think maybe deserves some stronger consideration. On the 1974 Exorcist letter, so many people are trying to figure out what is the meaning of this symbol that is on there. What are the meaning of these symbols that are there? Some people think that this is the Zodiac Killer paying homage to the Santa Rosa hitchhiker slayings and the murder of Kim Wendy Allen, who was carrying a barrel full of soy sauce, surprisingly, when she was attacked. And there were some symbols on there that had some definitely Asian meaning to them. I forget the exact translation of what was on the soy barrel, but they think that that's just the Zodiac Killer trying to draw them out. My answer to the Exorcist letter is none of the above. It's that it's just imitation Japanese writing, because the Exorcist letter talks a lot about the Mikado. It says, I saw and think The Exorcist was the best satirical comedy ever. And P.S., if I don't see this note in your paper, I'll do something nasty, which you know I'm capable of. But the middle section says, he plunged into the billowy wave in the suicide's grave, tit willow, tit willow, tit willow. That is from Gilbert and Sullivan's The Mikado. It's been a while since I've seen The Mikado, but I think that's the second to the last song that is performed in the show, or in the performance rather. And some people think that it has a hidden meaning. There was one solution from Kevin Robert Brooks that said he thought it was to kill, that the shapes would spell out, I'll do something nasty which you know I'm capable of, to kill. And what was Graysmith? Graysmith said that it could spell out Lee. I think he said that, or somebody did, like for Arthur Lee Allen. I don't think it's any of the above. I think it's just someone is trying to write fake Japanese writing, and I've sent that to people in Asia. Do you recognize any of this? Everybody said absolutely not. No one has ever provided any actual Asiatic connection to it. So I think that it's just someone trying to turning Japanese, if you will. And if it does turn out that Arthur Lee Allen was the Zodiac Killer, you'll know that my solution to the Z13 cipher was correct when it says, Allen Zodiac know my name. That is more of a stretch, though. I mean, I think that there's perhaps a 95% chance that my observation about the Exorcist letter was correct. But I was looking at the Z13, just doing an episode of Black Box Online Radio once as I'm talking to you guys now, and I saw the words Alan, Zodiac, know my name, and I've shared that in several episodes, even the most recent one that came out, Zodiac Z13 Cipher Extended Edition, which I invite you to listen to all of the content here on BBOR. So, over the past couple of years since I've been doing this show in Zodiac Mondays, I've come up with some of my own observations, and I would even just invite you to check out some more of the other true crime cases on this channel where I do some of my own, but absolutely I criticize other people because you're supposed to. And I have always said it, no matter what the theory is, if someone has written a book about it, or even written an article, or they have a YouTube video or a podcast, I'll talk about it here on BBR because you're supposed to. And some people are still leaving comments on this episode that I did about the disappearance of Maura Murray and the clues that are found in the movie Bottle Rocket. Bottle Rocket is a film by Wes Anderson that has Luke Wilson and Owen Wilson, of course, right? But it's all about how these guys are planning a getaway and the car breaks down, and someone posted online that they had this theory about how Maura Murray disappeared from Haverhill, New Hampshire in 2004 after allegedly crashing her car, and they thought that Maura Murray was inspired by the film Bottle Rocket, and the person who wrote this theory out said it was even one of her favorite films. I don't know how they knew that. But when you watch that movie, absolutely not. I mean, there is not really an ounce of actual connection that someone crashed a car to stage a disappearance. I think that is, well, it's that whole concept of, what did they say, that expression I heard on Oak Leaves and Onions, closing your eyes and feeling around in a dark room for something that you don't know the shape of. That's how you get theories like that. But if someone has written out this whole reason why they think that's a theory online, all right, well, tell them that it's ridiculous and tell them the reasons why. And that's all. That's all. That's all it is. But to the first comment from the response notifications person, if you want to piss off a Zodiac enthusiast, tell him that there was no Zodiac killer. The next one is from the classy, sassy mama, who ties into that by saying, if you look at the cases independently, without the quote-unquote fake theory of a serial killer, you see something very different, especially the second couple where the call was made. It is pretty obvious that it was the cop who was obsessed with the victim. Being an officer, he knew about the previous murders, and he also knew that if he made it appear if it were some sort of serial killer, he would be investigated in a totally different way, and no one would start looking at him. From there it grew and caught on, with a variety of people being crazy. Real killers trying to throw suspicion off of themselves, add with the media's strange love affair with the modern-day Ripper. Also, serial killers have a very certain type of psychopathology, and nothing about the so-called Zodiac murders fits that at all. It's a perfect storm situation that gave birth to a legend and allowed real murderers to escape justice. I believe it means real murderers to escape justice, but it says murders. Now, you guys can respond to that in the comments section down below. If you think that that's just what it was, that somebody called in after the Blue Rock Springs shooting on July 4th of 69 at 12:40 a.m. and said that I shot those kids and with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye. Well, firstly, this person is starting out being very skeptical, and skepticism can be a good thing. But then this person is making the assumption that it was a police officer who was obsessed with Darlene Ferrin. And my simple response is, how do you know that? And I even sent in a response, like, are you referring to Officer Richard Hoffman, who is in the park about 10 minutes before? And almost certainly Mike Mageau would recognize Richard Hoffman if he were the shooter. I mean, to the best of our knowledge, because Richard Hoffman rides to the hospital, and he even interviews Mike Mageau, the surviving victim, when he's in the hospital. I mean, maybe you're referring to a different police officer, but again, this would be another example of someone who is being critical, that's good, but then jumping to a very important conclusion. Because you remember that comment about the Ripper hoax theory that Toxquay was talking about? That guy also said that, in his theory, Donald Hardin wrote the 408 cipher, the guy who solved it with his wife Betty Hardin. He's like, oh yeah, obviously Donald Hardin solved the 408. Okay, you're being critical in some places, but then you're just jumping to a conclusion in another place. So, on the surface, something like this could make sense to certain people, but does it really? And more importantly, if you think that these are just unconnected murders, like Lake Herman Road was a drug-related killing, okay? And then an officer murdered Darlene Ferrin because he had a personal reason to do so, and he makes this phone call, and, well, how do you explain the letters? Did that officer write the letters too in the 408 cipher? And then why on earth was Cecilia Shepard murdered? How does that fit into your theory that you said that just other people latched onto it? Again, how would you explain the letter after the Stein murder, which contained a piece of Paul Stein's bloody shirt? And when you look at the handwriting on the first Zodiac letter that came after the murder of Darlene Ferrin, and the handwriting on the letter that came after the murder of Paul Stein, that stuff looks pretty similar. I'm certainly not thinking that that's a copycat. Now, there is the theory out there that it was just active participants who are providing this letter writer with the info and the pieces of the shirt. And I I mean, it's an unsolved case, anything's possible, but I definitely wouldn't immediately say, oh, well, the murders are all unconnected and somebody unified them with pieces of writing and the phone calls. How do you know that? I mean, if you're going to just say other people are all caught up in this own type of mystical thinking, maybe you are too, my friend. And the next question comes to us on the recent Z32 Cipher episode from Aaron Aragon, who says, your solution makes sense, as the Zodiac never planted a bomb. It was just a terroristic threat. It worked. Kids at my grade school were in a panic. My question is, how did a serial killer go from ambush incel killing to terrorism? He surely did a hitch in the military, U.S. Navy Korean War, possibly. Well, I definitely do think there is evidence to support that the Zodiac was ex-Navy or ex-Air Force, and I was talking about that in the Z32 Cipher episode about I was just online and I was reading about compasses and navigation, and there are all these things about radians and how they use them in compasses and navigation, purely unrelated sources to the Zodiac mystery. And I gave a lot of credit to Michael Cole for pointing that out, that was one of his observations that he wrote about very much so in his books about the American Practical Navigator could have influenced the Zodiac killer's thinking. But this is a very, very big question. Firstly, there's a comment that I should respond to first. Did the Zodiac killer actually plant a bomb that saying that his bomb was a dud, he got swamped out by the rain they had a while back? When I first read that stuff years ago for the first time, I thought that this guy's a total liar. He's a fraud. He's just trying to make himself look more badass than he is. And I I'm a little bit more uncertain now. Maybe I've been pulled into the world of Zodiac too much, and I start to think that maybe he's telling the truth about more things. But my gut instinct at the beginning was there never was a bomb. This guy is just trying to scare people because the Zodiac was a troll, and I think a lot of people agree with that. Yes, this is terrorism, but it's done so in a trolling way. Yes, the Zodiac is an actual murderer, but he's also trolling the police with their phone calls, and he's trying to be very annoying and definitely getting off on scaring people more than actually committing the crimes. But the question is, how did a serial killer go from an ambush incel killer to a terrorist? Now, some people think that the Zodiac was someone who was growing in confidence especially those who entertain the pre-Zodiac murders, that maybe somebody impulsively killed Sherry Joe Bates in 1966, and then for 2 years they've just been wrestling with that feeling. And they say this about serial killers, that the first crime may not be planned, but they get away with it, and then they just give in to it and they decide to kill again. And the second time the Zodiac operated was in a calculated way by going after two teenagers at Lake Herman Road for the same reason, heterosexual animosity, as Aragon said, an involuntary celibate, someone who is a rejected lover, or just maybe not even on the spectrum of lovers, like a social pariah, so to speak. So he goes after two teenagers in a car. Now, how does he go from being a terrorist? Well, then you get to the Blue Rock Springs shooting, commits another Lover's Lane shooting. Then you go to the Lake Berryessa stabbing, attacks to people, a couple, at what could be viewed as a Lover's Lane there at the park. And then with the Stein murder, the Zodiac deviates from his pattern because he wants to fool the authorities. No one's going to expect him to do that. And it also escalates the amount of thrill killing. It's an uphill battle for somebody like Sassy Mama, who said that these are all unconnected and these are just copycats. That Lake Berryessa and the Stein murder are both copycats, yet some way, somehow, someone with the exact same handwriting is mailing in pieces of Paul Stein's shirt. As I said, it's an uphill battle, and that would go into the category of you need to prove your case before I try and dismantle your theory anymore, to the person who wrote that one. But this could be someone who is just trying to do different things to stay relevant, to keep people's attention. First committing a crime wearing the hooded costume at Lake Berryessa, then murdering a taxi driver and mailing in the piece of Paul Stein's bloody shirt, making threats about bombs. Someone who just wants to get people's attention. That's one reason. The other reason could simply be that this person is just trying to be as annoying as possible. But to somebody like Sassy Mama, who said that variant of the hoax theory that the unconnected murders that somehow got all mistaken for being the same serial killer, maybe you would entertain more the policeman thrill kill club theory that, in fact, there is a connected group. It's not just a multiple killers theory, but a group theory. And I've talked a lot about that on this channel, and not so much about the policeman angle, but other people have written that out. In 2020, I did a three-part series on Officer Richard Hoffman as a Zodiac killer suspect, and almost certainly he's only connected to the Blue Rock Springs shooting. But the theory that I read off in part one was that someone said that their Zodiac hypothesis was that this was a policeman thrill kill club, where you would have at least 4 different murderers who are killing people and trying to make the public think that they are the same person, that this is one serial killer. And you just said, though, I mean, the officer is obsessed with Darlene Ferrin, so she was specifically targeted. Maybe there are different reasons why the other victims were targeted at Lake Berryessa or the Lake Herman Road murders. We simply do not know, and there's such little information to go on. But maybe something like DNA could solve the case one day, or maybe that there is some more forensic evidence that the authorities have that they are not sharing or revealing, or maybe some way, somehow, somebody will solve the Z13 cipher. Oh, but I do have one thing for you about the ciphers that I just remembered right now. Last year in 2021, there was this guy named Faisal Z from France who claimed that he had solved the Z13 and the Z32 ciphers, and he did so using the same method that David Oranchak used to solve the 340. And of course, it's David Oranchak, Jarl Van Eyck, and Sam Blake. 3 people worked on that, as well as the computer system, the star player of the team, actually. But this guy Faisal said that he used that same method to solve the Z13 and the Z32. Absolutely not. And I'm not just saying this because about 2 days ago I proposed my own original solution to the Z32. No. Not because of that at all. What would be the point of using the same method 3 times? Because what if somebody were really, really smart? What if somebody figured out the Z340 and in like 2 weeks, or even in a year, then you would mail in ciphers with the same method? People would be able to solve those instantly. No way would somebody do that. I mean, the Zodiac is not the smartest person who ever existed, but he was also not dumb. And that's why the Z340 wasn't a simple substitution cipher, or that the Z13 and the Z32 are also not simple substitution ciphers. That method was already used. And I proposed a different method in the Z32 episode that I did, and just to give you a little bit of a clue in if you didn't watch that one yet, although I hope you'll listen to that one, my recent episode on the Z32. In moving onward, I would like to give a shout out to Will Bloodworth and Super Strike 9, who both shared some info with me. The I-65 killer has been identified as Harry Edward Greenwell. However, he passed away in 2013. This was another case that was solved through DNA and genealogy and an assortment of forensic techniques, and it does give you some hope that there could be more cases like this solved in the near future. Personally, I think in the year 2022, we're seeing all kinds of discoveries made in the true crime world, scientifically, like this one, and some of them are a little bit more investigative, like the discovery of Brandon Lawson's final resting place, as well as the revelation that Sherry Papini's story of a fake kidnapping was just that, a hoax, and the identification of the perpetrator in the Elijah Wood racetrack shooting. Lots of discoveries have already happened, and it's only April. And I was not familiar with the I-65 killer actually until Super Strike 9 and Will Bloodworth had shared that revelation with me. This was absolutely news to me, as they would say. And there's an article over on People magazine that will share some info about not only the I-65 killer, but also the victims and the DNA and forensic searches. It says, "We had the suspect's DNA, but we were never able to link it to one specific person until recently," Indiana State Police Sergeant Glenn Fifield tells People magazine. And I did watch one of the press conferences that was put out by the police department, and they went through a lot of formalities in it. That took up a bunch of time, but it's about 27 minutes long here on YouTube. But to continue with the article, more than 30 years after 3 women were robbed, sexually assaulted, and murdered at inns in Kentucky and Indiana, police have identified their killer. It's important to remember that the I-65 killer was also known as the Days Inn killer, even though it didn't seem every crime occurred at a Days Inn. At a press conference Tuesday, Indiana State Police said Harry Edward Greenwell, who is deceased, was responsible for the deaths of Vicky Heath, Margaret Gill, and Jean Gilbert. Police said Greenwell died in 2013 at the age of 68 and was also responsible for sexually assaulting a 4th woman. Yes, there was one survivor of the I-65 killer. Greenwell was finally identified through investigative genealogy, according to police. I'd like to believe that whatever each of us defines as justice, or what might closure mean to us, that we're all able to share the healing process now, knowing the long-known attacker has now been brought out of the dark. Indiana State Police Sergeant Glenn Fifield says that police are looking to see if Greenwell, who had an extensive criminal history spanning from 1963 to 98, is responsible for additional slayings. Absolutely, I would say that, even as someone who was not familiar with the case, because the fact that he only attacked 4 women in such a short time period, that is not typical behavior of sexually motivated serial killers. Very clearly, this guy is a sexually motivated murderer, so normally people are giving in to urges that are driving them to commit these crimes. Therefore, I would expect that he has committed definitely more than just these 4. We will look at any of the evidence that people bring to us. Fifield tells People the I-65 runs from Gary, Indiana to the Gulf of Mexico, so we are talking hundreds of miles. Investigators have long believed that it was not isolated to these 4. It was always just a hunch because of the violent nature of the crimes. But yes, you have to point that out. Someone who's just a savage serial killer, but he's going to stop after 4 victims. And bear in mind, he was not caught. I mean, he was not identified until just now, and he's already passed away in 2013. So I would definitely expect that there could be crimes over a 20-year period. I mean, that's typical behavior for serial killers. Dubbed the I-65 Killer or the Days Inn Killer, Greenwell robbed and murdered 3 young women, all of them working in motels in Kentucky and Indiana. His first known victim was Vicky Heath on February 21st of 1987. Heath, a front desk clerk, was working the night shift at a Super 8 motel in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. As I said, not all of them occurred in a Days Inn. Almost 2 years later, on March 3rd of 1989, Margaret Gill, who was known as Peggy, a 24-year-old overnight auditor, was murdered at the Days Inn in Merrillville, Indiana. Jean Gilbert was 35 years old and a part-time auditor, and she was killed the same day at a Days Inn in Remington, Indiana. Both women were also shot. So, I think that is just, the tip of the iceberg with this guy. If he's going to be going out and doing things like a double event, then yes, I think he would have committed more crimes. On January 2nd of 1990, a 4th victim was sexually assaulted at the Days Inn in Columbus, Indiana, but was able to escape. And as I understand, that is the only survivor that has been conclusively connected to the I-65 killer, from my own limited knowledge. Following the murders, the Indiana State Police Lab were able to link Gill and Gilbert through ballistics. Those are the 2 victims. Both were shot with a .22 caliber firearm. In the early 2000s, Gilbert, Heath, and the survivor were linked through DNA evidence. In 2019, the Indiana State Police asked the FBI for assistance with investigative genealogy. The detectives were able to generate some leads through DNA analysis, and the investigative genealogy provided additional fields, says Fifield. It gave them someone to look at. We never had a suspect or a name to look at prior to this. We had the suspect's DNA, but we were never able to link it to one specific person until recently. All right, and big thank you to People magazine for this article here that was written by Christine Pulisic, just citing the source. And right now it's important to say rest in peace to the victims. Absolutely terrible events that occurred at the hands of this man, the I-65 killer, and there are probably more people out there who could be connected to him in the future. But for now, I would like to ask you guys something in a lighter direction, on a lighter note, so to speak, and that is, do you watch Hulu? About 2 weeks ago, I did an episode on the show The Dropout, which is all about Elizabeth Holmes and the company Theranos, that was just a giant scam, more or less. That's the nutshell version. I finally saw the conclusion of that one, and I was discussing that with Michael Suddeth in the comment section. He's appeared as a guest on this show, and I did a response to his book about postmortem survival, a critique of it nonetheless, and he just said they should have released the entire program all at once, and I don't know why they didn't do that, because The Dropout could have been such an excellent 2-night event if they just released all 8 episodes at once. 4 episodes on Saturday and 4 on Sunday. Okay, I would have had an amazing weekend. But by the time I got to episode 8, I was already kind of done with the story. I was already tired of looking at Elizabeth Holmes, even in the fictional version portrayed by Amanda Seyfried. But there's a new show that I've been following on Hulu called The Girl from Plainville, and it's the story of Michelle Carter and Conrad Roy, and what happens if someone could be responsible for either assisted suicide, coercing someone into suicide, talking somebody into suicide. And I was not familiar with this story, but it is based on real people, Michelle Carter and Conrad Roy. There's even a Wikipedia page out called The Death of Conrad Roy, and it's still going on. It's, again, one of those shows that they release the episodes weekly. This one is a little bit more tolerable because it is much darker than The Dropout, and is definitely dealing with some very heavy emotions and things like depression. Someone is, well, contemplating suicide. But I was reminded of the real-life story of In Young Yu and Alexander Ortula. That's a true crime case that I talked about in 2019. I did 2 of those old black box recordings about this because In Young Yu was a Boston College student. She was from Korea, and her boyfriend, Alexander Ortula, was of Filipino origin, but they were in Massachusetts in a relationship together, and prior to his death, he committed suicide by jumping off a parking garage. They had exchanged tens of thousands of text messages the way that boyfriends and girlfriends would, but many of them were about her, talking him into committing suicide, saying, just do it, people will be better off without you. And they were trying to find out, does this type of emotional and psychological abuse lead to manslaughter? And this would definitely be involuntary manslaughter. But what happened with In Young-yu was she is a citizen of South Korea, so she fled the country because she thought they were going to charge her with involuntary manslaughter, and that's a big differentiation from the girl from Plainville. And to be very clear, the girl from Plainville is not based on this story of the Boston College student. It is based on real-life people who had those names, Michelle Carter and Conrad Roy. This is a different case. But In Young-yu went back to her home country of South Korea. And I am not a lawyer, but because I talk about true crime cases on BBOR, I once read something that no country has a responsibility to surrender their citizens to a foreign government. It's part of international law. I don't even know if my interpretation of that is correct because, as I said, I'm not a professional. Say, for example, if someone were to go to South Korea and they are a citizen of South Korea, but they committed a crime in the United States, the South Korean government has no responsibility or even reason to give this person to the American authorities. And I think that that's something that just you guys can probably wrap your head around, but it definitely doesn't happen all the time. Since I read that stuff about extradition and so on, absolutely there are exceptions that prove the rule, and sometimes there are like loopholes in the system. That's, I guess, why you have to go to law school to figure all that stuff out. But because the South Korean government was not going to surrender In Young-yu, or they didn't have a reason to, they were going to try to extradite her from South Korea back to the United States of America using something called the Interpol Red Warrant. And at that point, In Young-yu just decided to come back voluntarily and face the charges, which probably was for the best. I don't know if lawyers advised her. I could only imagine that they would. But it even just begged the question, should she be charged with involuntary manslaughter if she was practically coaching her boyfriend into suicide? Well, I would like to go over to an article that was written by bcheights.com that says, former Boston College student In Young-yu pleads guilty to involuntary manslaughter. And this was written by Aaron Shannon from 2021. In Young-yu, the former Boston College student, charged in connection with the suicide of her boyfriend Alexander Urtula, pled guilty to involuntary manslaughter on Thursday, back in 2021. In Suffolk County Superior Court, you admitted that she sent tens of thousands of texts to Urtula because he was her boyfriend. The Boston College student, age 19, in the months leading up to his death, text which Suffolk County District Attorney Rachel Rowlands described as evidence of use pattern of physical, verbal, and psychological abuse. Superior Court Judge Robert Ullman sentenced you to 2.5 years in jail, I should have said 2.5 years in jail, and 10 years of probation. You could have faced up to 20 years in prison if it had gone to trial. The suspended sentence means that you will avoid jail time if she adheres to the conditions of her probation, which include mental health treatment, 300 hours of community service, and that she cannot profit or benefit in any way from the case, according to the statement of the DA's office. Well, I definitely think that that's a good condition to put on there, because the true crime world is very odd when it comes to profit. Perhaps you'll remember O.J. Simpson and his book, If I Did It, Here's How It Happened, which was a novel that was written by some guy named Pablo Fineves, and they just put O.J.'s name on there. It was ghost-written, and it was based on interviews. And they were like, well, how can this guy profit from his story? How can they be selling this book? And of course, the Goldman family, the family of Ron Goldman, the murder victim in the O.J. Simpson case, obtained the financial rights to that. And if anyone buys the book, then it goes to the Goldman family. But that just begs the question, how are people able to profit from true crime cases? Well, I heard an episode of Lionel Nation once where he was talking about that. Again, he's a lawyer and I'm not. And he said, Martin Luther King was in a Birmingham jail. What Rosa Parks was doing by not giving up her seat on the bus was illegal. Martin Luther King's activities were illegal. Lots of people are doing illegal things, but they aren't necessarily deemed immoral in retrospect. So that's why people are allowed to profit from their illegal activities. Or if there's a story that is involving their illegal activities, they're allowed to get a book deal or sell movie rights and so on. So, I mean, I definitely do agree with that. Morality and legality are not the same thing. So that's just kind of a blank check, unless there is some condition in here like In Young Yu has, where she cannot profit from the story, because I think that if they're going to give her this suspended sentence, which again I'm not even really sure too clearly how that works, that she avoids the 2.5 years in jail if she adheres to the conditions of the probation, that sounds like a slap on the wrist. But in all seriousness, I do think that that woman needs mental health treatment, and she apparently was even present when Alexander Rotula jumped off the parking garage. Jail time would have perhaps been appropriate, but I mean, she just seems like a troubled person in her own right, and maybe even some type of medical incarceration would have been a way to rectify the situation, because if she's just going to go to jail for 2.5 years and then come out still psychologically messed up, perhaps even more demented after spending time in prison, then she's just going to do it all over again. So, who knows? This agreement with the defense counsel was made in close consultation with the Ortula family. It is consistent with their desire to see accountability and closure to protect the legacy of their son. In May of 2019, Alexander Ortula jumped to his death from a parking garage in Roxbury, Massachusetts, just hours before he was set to graduate from Boston College. In Young Yu took an Uber to the garage, and after learning of Ortula's plan to commit suicide, she said that she was present at the time of his death. In Young Yu's abuse worsened in the days leading up to Ortula's death, according to Rollins. Rollins said that there were thousands of text messages In Young Yu sent to Alexander Ortula, and they were evidence of her abuse, including telling him to go kill himself and that his family would be better off without them. But it really begs the question about where would the lines of free speech be drawn, because I think that normally, anytime speech deals with calls to action, it can not be protected. Like, if you were to tell somebody, I'm going to kill you, that's using language, but it's a call to action. And if she's telling him to inflict harm upon himself in this extreme manner, that's my only interpretation of how they did this. And perhaps we'll see a stronger dramatization of this concept on The Girl from Plainville. But as I said, they haven't released the whole series yet. I've only seen 4 episodes, waiting for more to come out and learn a little bit more about the the dramatized display of that case. You know, you never really get the complete full story because people are always adding in certain details, which they have every right to do in a TV show. It's a TV show, but they might have a stronger story if they just stuck to the actual basic facts. But you can weigh in the comment section down below if you'd have anything to say about the I-65 killer, or the girl from Plainville, or In Young Yu and Alexander Ortula. I would love to read your comments, and thank you so much for listening to this episode. Anybody can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com. You can also get me on Facebook. My personal Facebook is in the description box, and there is always BlackBoxNid88 over on Instagram. And I'll see you there for the bonus podcast. Until next time.